Brian Wilson, Mary Catherine Ham, Brian Neiman, today's newsmakers, and you, the Morning Majority. 105.9 FM, AM 630. WMAL.
6:38 on WMAL. I want to tell you, coming up on the show this morning, 8:06, Mark Levin, the great one, will join us. He had an interview with Sarah Palin last night where she broke the news that she's not going to run for president. And Senator Chuck Grassley will join us at 8:36. We'll get into Fast and Furious with the Republican from Iowa. That's coming up in the 8 o'clock hour, 8:36, 2 hours from now. Lanny Davis is on the phone right now. Lanny, you were on the O'Reilly Factor last night. I believe you need to give us some credit, perhaps maybe even some money, because, the Fox people listen to the show, and I'm sure that they hear you on the Morning Majority on a regular basis and said, hey, we got to have Lanny on the O'Reilly Factor.
They know that I give you guys such a hard time that makes O'Reilly easy.
Yeah, right. So, all right, let's get into Fast and Furious. So the Attorney General, Eric Holder, testified in front of Congress. I'll play the sound bites of Darrell Issa questioning him.
The president believes he's
sorry, this is the wrong one. Here we go.
When did you first know about the program, officially I believe called Fast and Furious? To the best of your knowledge, what date?
I'm not sure the exact date, but I probably heard about Fast and Furious for the first time over the last few weeks.
All right, now we have documents, emails that have come out saying that he was actually told about this first time maybe July of 2010 or October of 2010. So did the Attorney General perjure himself there in front of Congress?
No. First of all, Eric Holder is one of the most honest people I've known in my lifetime, and I've known him for about 30 years, so that's how old we are. Secondly, there was no reason for him to lie. I think he misunderstood the question or misspoke.
Oh, come
made
on!
An honest mistake.
It was fairly simple.
Lanny, how can you? I've heard that argument before.
Guys, he didn't lie. He didn't intentionally tell an untruth. That is 100% certainty. He made a mistake.
Well, hold it.
Wait, how is it 100% certain?
How do you know that for sure?
I know that for sure because this man for 30 years is one of the great U.S. attorneys we've ever had. He's an incredibly honest man, and he owns up to his mistakes. And what happened here is the context was this is a screwed-up program, and the White House has mishandled this thing. Jay Carney yesterday should have been fully briefed. They should have put all the documents out a long time ago as to why they allowed this ridiculous idea of putting guns into the hands of criminals and tracking them as if that isn't going to be dangerous. And the ATF didn't keep the Justice Department informed. And Eric Holder misunderstood that question, as far as I can tell, because he's a completely 100% honest guy.
Well, hold on a minute, Lanny. I got to ask you, because he said before Congress that I just learned about Fast and Furious in the last few weeks, and that was in May of this year. And then we see all of these documents that come out yesterday that indicates he was being briefed in 2010, about almost a year earlier, and then was getting monthly briefings thereafter. So how can he say that that was the first time he heard it? How could he have misunderstood what was a very clear question?
Look, I agree he needs to explain this.
Well, yeah,
better.
but he hasn't done that, has he?
Here's the answer. The context, if you look at the context of the hearing and the questions, was about the screwed-up program. The screwed-up program. So when he's asked, when did you first learn about the program, in his head, and I'm just interpreting this because I know he's an honest person, is that he's talking about when did you learn about the screwed-up program for the first time, and that was just recently. And then you can say, well, why didn't you know this earlier? What's going on with the ATF? Well, there isn't an attorney general that I can think of in this century, or at least since the ATF was invented, that has tracked everything the ATF has done. It's one of the reasons why the ATF should probably be abolished, because they're the gang who can't shoot straight.
All right, but let me ask you this, Lanny, then. If you think he knew about it but didn't know that it was having problems until a few weeks before he actually testified, all right, I'll just play along with you and say, okay, that makes sense. But he knew about it from the beginning, and if you say it was a dumb idea from the beginning, then shouldn't the Attorney General say, hey, what the heck are we doing here, allowing guns to go into Mexico without really knowing how to track them?
I don't think he knew about this cockamamie idea from the beginning. I think there was a concept that you mark guns and you track them in order to go back to the criminals who are at the core of the conspiracy. That's a standard law enforcement technique. The idea of what the ATF did that they didn't tell the Justice Department about, it's literally the gang who can't shoot straight. Now, there is a question of oversight all the way up to the level of the Attorney General. He should take responsibility ultimately for what goes on within the far reaches of his department. But there isn't an Attorney General that you could say knew what the ATF was going on the borders of Texas and Mexico. That's just an unreasonable criticism. But responsibility, yes. Criticizing him, no.
So what do you think about Sarah Palin not running?
Very sad. I was the chairman of the Palin for President committee here. I was trying to raise money for her, so it's a disappointment to Democrats. We all loved Sarah and wanted her to be the nominee.
And I also want to ask you about this, the Occupy Wall Street movement. Have you been occupying? Have you been hanging out in the drum circle?
I'm very occupied with a 13-year-old and a 6-year-old trying to figure out how to play baseball with my 13-year-old. But look, this is a movement without focus.
Yeah.
It's a bunch of people who really have no agenda that can change anything. It's venting. It's absolutely traditional in American history on the left and the right for these sorts of protests to occur, but there is literally no chance that they can affect any change. They should be in Washington trying to get Dodd-Frank implemented, trying to get the consumer agency overseeing our financial institutions in a responsible way. But these types of protests are a part of American tradition, and I applaud them.
Get Dodd-Frank passed so we can have higher banking fees put on us. Yeah.
Well, I'm sure they're opposed to the higher banking fees, but the banks really are responsible fundamentally, as the investment bank community on Wall Street is responsible for irresponsible speculative investments in these derivatives and these mortgage paper derivatives that have led to these foreclosures and to our collapse in 2008.
All right, Lanny.
No one has been held accountable for that. And that's what these young people and these protesters are frustrated. And by the way, this is one of the Purple Nation issues, the name of my column. By the way, I wrote about Grover Norquist.
Yeah, a little love letter to Grover, right?
And it was a pretty good love letter, because I disagree with almost everything Grover stands for, but he is a very, very principled and a good man. But look, left and right do agree on better oversight over these banks, especially the investment banks that traded in worthless paper. And guess who ends up paying the toll? All these people with mortgages that are being foreclosed.
All right, Lanny Davis.